Have you ever wondered why you might have one leg shorter than the other? Well, in this video, we're going to be going over the top 5 reasons why that may be a possibility. And we're going to be talking about ways that we can work about correcting that. And even later in this video, I'm going to show you how I adjust a patient to fix these issues. So stay tuned. So before we get to the 5 reasons of why you might potentially have a short leg, I'd like to introduce you to Sam. This is my spinal analysis machine. This is a very important tool that can actually measure to see if you're putting more weight on your left side of your body or on the right side. We actually put our hands at the top of the iliac crest right here, and we're actually measuring for the pelvic discrepancy. We're seeing if the body is shifting either left or right, which will put a weight distribution on one side more than the other. And we'll also look at things like if you have a higher right shoulder or if you have any kind of head tilt, which we can talk about in later videos. At home, I have a very simple tip for you to identify if you have a musculoskeletal issue due to a short leg. At home, you're going to take just 2 weigh scales and stand on them just like this. And so you're going to want to be on the center, have the weigh scales turned to the sides, and stand as straight in the middle as possible. Look up, don't look down. And you want your weight distribution to be within 5 pounds or less. Just a really simple check right there. So when we're talking about leg length, we can definitely look at the hips as the main cause for a lot of these issues. If your hips are imbalanced like this and that left hip goes higher like that, your femur attaches right here to the acetabulum in the pelvis. So when this hip raises up, the femur head is going to raise up as well. When we're looking at the pelvis, we have 4 different listings for that pelvic rotation that can create a short leg. We either have internal rotation, which is going to be an IN of the pelvis, the pelvic ilium, an EX, which is going to be external rotation of the pelvis. We're going to have anterior rotation of the pelvis, which is going to be AS, or posterior rotation of the pelvis, which is going to be a PI. You can actually put your thumbs here, and it might be hard to palpate if you're not used to this, but we were looking for any kind of rotation and seeing any kind of prominency right here. So when I'm looking at this, her left side is actually raised higher than her right side. So that's going to indicate that she has anterior rotation right there. Probably the best way to determine that you can look for pelvic misalignment is, first of all, we're just looking at this middle pant seam. That's not a true indicator. I wouldn't go just based off of that. But when we look at this, you can see rather than that being in the center, it's actually rotated off to the left like that. That's going to indicate that we have anterior rotation typically on the left side, once again, and posterior indication of the pelvis on the right. And when you're looking at the gluteal folds right here, how you can actually determine if it's an IN or EX, if the iliac spine or the iliac crest of the pelvis is actually internally rotated or externally rotated, you can actually see with Dominique, she's actually got this flatter appearance on her right and is more rounded on the left. This is actually going to indicate that this iliac crest is more externally rotated, and it's going to give us this more prominent appearance on that left side. And this flatter appearance right here is going to be internally rotated, giving it a flatter appearance. So another reason why you might have a short leg, it actually has to do with muscle imbalances. And the biggest muscle what creates a hip and leveling motion is your quadratus lumborum. It's actually going to be located at the bottom of your T12 rib, and it's going to actually attach the transverse processes from your L1 through your L4 vertebrae. So one thing that we want to do to help loosen that up is we use our light vibrational tool that we use for our jaw clicking video. And we just do that along that transverse process and just do very light vibration to kind of help loosen that up. And you can even do that underneath that 12th rib. Obviously, if you don't have this at home, you can use a different type of light vibrational tool. A lot of times we're talking about functional movement, imbalances in the hips, but we actually also have to look at the structure of your spine as well, which is why it's so important we actually get an x-ray. When we look at your x-ray and we see something like this, that could be a scoliosis. So we're going to see shifting in the thoracic spine, you can see it in the lumbar spine, but generally it's going to create an imbalance where the hips are going to be misaligned as well. Every single tip that we use in this video can actually be used during a chiropractic treatment where we can actually work on bringing that hip into a better alignment. So if you have this issue with the scoliosis, it's not going to be a simple fix. It's definitely going to take time. So another reason why you can have a shorter leg, one more than the other, is because you have a collapsed arch in your foot. That's exactly why we do these orthotic foot scans in our office, where you're walking over this platform and we can actually track where you're actually putting your weight distribution in your foot. So when you look at my scan over here, this is from over a year and a half ago. You can see on this left side, this black line is showing you where my tracing pattern was and how straight it is. And I'm literally putting no weight on the arch support of the left side of my foot. but on the right side, I was. This is what it looks like when you have more of a healthy arch in your foot comparative to that left side. So a custom orthotic, and also some chiropractic treatments can actually help with recreating that arch, helping rebalance your hips, and also taking pressure off your back. So when you look at a foot that's actually collapsed or that's feet that are going flat, you're gonna cause this eversion effect of the foot. So if you look at my left foot here, the foot's gonna inward rotate like that, and it's gonna cause my knee to rotate inward as well. And when that happens, my hip is gonna collapse, thus giving that short leg appearance because of that hip discrepancy. Over my years of practice, I've had so many patients come up to me, they've been told by some practitioner that they've had a short leg, and I have to let them know that it has to do with one of the main 4 things we've talked about previously, because the last thing is something that happens to probably less than 1% of the population, and that's actual trauma, where if you've actually broken a bone in your leg or in your back that's actually creating that short leg discrepancy. We can normally rule that out if that's not in that patient history and focus on those other 4 things that we've talked about. So we're gonna put together these 4 steps into correcting Dominique's short legs. We're gonna start by measuring the medial malleolus of her legs, and we're gonna see by putting my feet at the bottom part of the medial malleolus, she has a short left leg here, and she's actually going longer on the right side. The next thing we're going to want to focus on is trying to stretch out that quadratus lumborum. I'm going to grab my arthrostem here, and we're going to go use this rubber blade at the bottom of her T12 ribs. So I'm going to stretch out just on this right side. Sometimes just by stretching this alone, if you do enough traction, you can actually hear a popping sound or a low release. Next, we're gonna wanna work on Dominique's structural issues. So with her having a longer right leg, she's gonna have sacrum rotation to that side. We're gonna work on adjusting that. So we're gonna adjust for the sacrum rotation on the right. One tap, and one tap. The next thing we're going to focus on with Dominique is just look at her arches. She does have a really good arch on this right side. She's a little bit more flatter on this left. And this will help out with more of a long-term correction. So we're going to use this ball piece, once again with our arthrostem, just kind of working on this inner arch of her foot. Now we're going to look at also at her pelvis misalignment. Typically, if they're longer on the right and we're stretching that side out, we might have rotation on that left side that's going to kind of counteract that rotation in the pelvis. So we're going to look over here, and you can see she's rotated more anteriorly on this left side. We're going to just kind of lightly massage, do a little bit of acupressure. It can be really ticklish for the patient. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to actually do an anterior drop on the table for that anterior pelvic misalignment. So I'm touching her ASIS, which is going to be this hip pointer, and just dropping that down. So after we do those 4 different steps, we look at the medial malleolus again, and we'll see better symmetry in her ankles right there as we're correcting that short leg. That's how you put together these different aspects. You might not need all 4, or you might not even need 2 or more. It might just be one of these things that's throwing it off. So it's always a good idea to consult with a practitioner that's specialized in looking at these different things, so that we can actually help you out with those musculoskeletal imbalances. So after we get you adjusted and we have that leg length looking even now, we want to make sure that reinforce these muscle patterns. So in our office, we actually use these vibration plates where patients actually go ahead and stand up on here for 5 minutes, knowing that you probably don't own one of these at your own home. What we actually inform our patients is that you're going to want to march in place for 5 minutes. You want to get your knees going about waist height, and this will have a similar effect to holding those muscle patterns as this vibration plate would. Thanks for tuning into this informational video. We have more in this informational series in the links below. Please hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep it cracking.